Who does Fernando Alonso think is the best of the new generation? Who is Ollie Bearman closest to out of the rookies? And how does the relationship work between Bortoleto and Alonso when they're trying to balance competitors versus management? Here is part one of the interesting things that we learned from the Chinese F1 drivers press conference. Starting with Bortoleto, on reflection of the Australian Grand Prix, he said that a number of drivers had said to him that this is one of the toughest races he'll ever face in his career. Also, he has a brake problem throughout the race and a suspension issue, but they are struggling to fully understand what happened there. He theorised that it might be to do with a racing incident that he had with Hulkenberg. Lastly, out of all of the rookies, he's probably the closest to Bearman, but he still wants everyone else to do well as well. Speaking of Bearman, he said that he made some clumsy mistakes during Australia, but also Haas aren't as competitive as they would have liked to have been. In fact, the team are surprised at how uncompetitive they are, although they did get some pointers as to why, so they are bringing some ideas into Shanghai. Lastly, he said there is a really good relationship between himself, Antonelli and Bortoleto. Before we get to the collective questions, there was Fernando Alonso, who said that they were competitive in qualifying and perhaps a bit better than expected, but because of the type of race that they had in Australia, they don't really know where their performance is. He's expecting that they will have a better understanding in about 4 or 5 races time. Also, he was asked about driving alongside the rookies, and he said that he still feels competitive, motivated and fresh, but if one day he feels like he's not as fast, he said he will be the first person to say that he's not really enjoying it anymore. Alonso was also asked about the talk surrounding bringing back the V10s and the V8s, and he does miss the noise, but he said that technology has evolved and we do have engines that are more efficient now. And so whilst drivers just care about having the fastest engine, they can't really go against time in the hybrid era because what they're doing in that space is really positive. And he likened it to removing the halos just to improve the overall sort of fan experience. If you were wondering how the relationship between Newey and Alonso was going, well, it's not really going anywhere, and that's simply because he hasn't spoken to him much. But he does know that Newey is looking at what they're doing every weekend. He said that Bearman and Bortoleto are the best of the new generation, although admittedly they were both sat there and he manages Bortoleto. Speaking of that relationship, Alonso's really proud of it, and Alonso doesn't feel like giving help to Bortoleto is going to take away from his performance, although just from a personal input here, they are in teams that are in 2 different places on the field, so I'd like to see what he thinks if they were actually fighting each other. But anyway, he said that he's helping Bortoleto by telling him about his experiences at circuits, and he's also giving advice on things like approaching a race weekend and how to deal with marketing. Bortoleto said that he is really grateful for everything that Alonso has done, and he really hopes that they can fight each other at some point. Lastly, the drivers were asked whether the race should have been red flagged when the recovery truck was on track during the Australian Grand Prix, and the 2 rookies agreed with what Alonso said, which is that if you respect the slower lap times that you're meant to be driving at, then you shouldn't be going too fast when you go past the truck. And so he understands the reasoning for the question, but in reality, he thinks it was probably fine.